What is a Medicaid spend down? How does it work? And do you need to pay it? Well, that last part of that question, do you need to pay it, is going to depend on you and your situation. So I'm going to answer that at the end, along with a very, very simplified explanation of a way to think about it that will help you kind of remember. So, first, what is it? It's when you have an income, let's say you have Medicaid, obviously, and you have an income that's above a certain threshold set by the state. And every year that threshold number is adjusted every April 1st. So that number in the state of Missouri, April 1st, when I'm shooting this video today, 2025, that number is $1,109, $1,109 per month for a single person. And it goes up with each member of the household. If you have multiple people in the household, certain other situations, but let's just look at a single person, $1,109. So if you are at that number or below, you will not have a spend down with Medicaid. Now, if you have a higher income, there's a quick calculation I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to share my screen. So let's say that you you have an income of $1,579. Okay. And what the state does, the very first thing is they give you a $20 credit. We're going to subtract $20 to make it look like your income is $20 lower than what it is. Don't ask me why they do that, but they do. So you now have an income that we're going to work with of 1559. Now this is gross income. So we're going to take that $1,109 away from that. We're going to subtract that. And that is your spend down, maybe. But there are things that go into this. So what does it mean? How does it work? Anything that's a medical expense for you, it could be doctors, it could be hospitalization, it could be just medical expenses, even mileage, even prescriptions. Those things add up and count toward your spend down and make that number smaller. One of the other things that's really cool is your Medicare insurance premiums. This year is $185. Let's subtract that. That would come off. Now your spend down is actually only $265. So let's say that you go to the doctor and maybe you get some medications and that totals 165 that you spent on medical expenses and doctor's medications. Now you got $100 to go before you've met your spend down. Remember that phrase, you've met your spend down, because you can meet it through these medical expenses, your Medicare premiums, all those things, any kind of medical insurance, you can meet it through that. And if you come up short, or you can just simply pay it, you can have it deducted from your bank account, you can mail in a check. But essentially what happens is, so in this example, you'd still have $100 to go before your spend down is met for that month. You have to meet your spend down in order for your Medicaid to be active. So it can literally go off and on like a light switch. If your spend down has been met in any given month, then your Medicaid is on. If it's not been met, if it hasn't been met, you're not paying it, then your Medicaid is essentially off for that month. Now, the question is, do you need to pay it? Let me give you an analogy. I like analogies because it makes things simpler to understand. So if you have in insurance, we have this word called a deductible. You're going to think about it like that. It's not what it is, but you're going to think about it like that. Uh, so if you have a car and you have car insurance and you have this deductible that you would have to pay out of your pocket before your insurance kicks in, let's say it's $500. It's pretty common for vehicle insurance. You have a $500 deductible. You crash into a tree and you got to get your car fixed because you can't drive it. You crashed into a tree. So you have to pay this $500 deductible before your insurance kicks in, before it activates. So that you think of a spend down kind of like a deductible on car insurance. And everybody has a deductible on their car insurance. Here's the question. Did you pay it last month? Only if you needed it, only if you needed the insurance, right? So the spend down is the same way. You only pay it if you need your Medicaid to be active. Now, whether or not you pay it is going to depend on who you are, what kind of insurance you have, and how much the spend down is. Because let's face it, if in my example of $1,579, if you have an $800 spend down, that's going to hurt. And you're going to say, you know what, keep it. I'm not going to pay that because I can't afford it. That's half my money. So you wouldn't have that kind of a spend down on that income. But still, there are people who have spend downs that are, in excess of $500 or $700. It just depends on where your income falls in that range. So do you have to pay it? The short answer is no. but it's also, it depends. It depends on what that spend down is. There are many, many times when it's very advantageous for you to go ahead and pay it and keep it paid. Just make sure it's paid every month. If it's under $100, probably a really, really good idea to keep it paid. And it also depends on what kind of insurance you have. So if you have, thinking specifically of Medicare Advantage plans that are what are called dual plans. So it's a dual eligible special needs plans. That means you're dually eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. If you get on one of those specialized plans, you have generally a pretty good over-the-counter benefit, grocery benefit, things like that. So even if it's a wash, let's say you get a $200 grocery and over-the-counter benefit that you're going to use every month, and let's say that you have a $200 spend down. In that situation, if that's a type of Medicare Advantage plan where you you have no copays at the doctor or hospital, pay that thing. Pay that $200 because the other thing that happens, yeah, it's a wash on the over the counter and groceries. You got to spend 200 to get 200 in this example. But now you have costs when you go to the doctor, a specialist, you take a ride in an ambulance, you go to the ER, you get put in the hospital. If you got zeros because you're on a true dual eligible special needs plan, it makes a whole lot of sense to keep that thing paid just for medical reasons. So, that's really, this is not about benefits, but a lot of times people are have selected a specific Medicare Advantage plan because of the benefits. Uh, if you have a $250 over-the-counter benefit and you got a $180 spend down, for example, pay it. It's a good deal because let's pretend I'm Medicaid. You give me $180 and I give you 250 back. I'll make that deal every month. So in situations like that, it can be really advantageous to go ahead and keep it paid. Some people are not in those plans, but what it does is basically is it makes sure that your Medicaid is turned on. Now, if you have a higher spend down, I'm going to address that really quick. If you have a higher spend down, maybe a few $100s, think of it as a safety net. You don't have to pay that every month because you don't need the insurance. But what if a month comes along and you do need the insurance because you went to the doctor, you went to the ER, they admitted you to the hospital, now you got some bills, some heavy bills that exceed whatever your spend down is, then you want the state to pay that. So you need to make sure that spend down is met. Basically, I just want to answer the question, what is a spend down? How does it work? And do I need to pay it? And do you need to pay it? Really kind of depends on you, what insurance you have, what your medical needs are. So there are people who don't activate their Medicaid by paying the spend down until they actually need it. They have bills that exceed, what they're able to pay. So I hope that helps. Call us if you have any questions. By the way, as I was making this video, I just got a message from a friend who worked at the Department of Senior Services for many, many years, and they sent me this document. So I'm going to put a link to that document. It's the official state document from the state of Missouri about spend down. It's very, very short, two-page PDF. So you can read that if you want to read some more about it and help you understand it a little bit better.